To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast, a place of learning for those who aspire to leadership excellence. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Dr. Theresa Larson, or Dr. T, as she is affectionately known, is a leading expert and advocate for well-being and strength across both personal and professional domains. She is the founder of Movement RX, where she and her team help individuals and organizations optimize physical and mental health. In her work, she draws from her own experience as a former Marine Corps officer who overcame severe trauma. She is passionate about helping veterans, business leaders, and owners thrive in the face of challenges such as client attrition, employee retention, and scalability issues, which are often linked to compromised mental or physical well-being of leaders and employees. Dr. T is on a mission to help over 100,000 veterans, business leaders, and owners improve their longevity and retain their people by 2030 by disrupting outdated leadership cultures and truly prioritizing health and well-being within organizations. Dr. T has been on the podcast before, and you can hear her previous comments by going to podcast episode 40. Dr. T, welcome back. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Oh, thanks, Mike. It's an honor to be here with you. And because it's the Marine Corps birthday coming up,
yes.
I felt like this is a really awesome podcast to be on right now.
Yes. Well, happy birthday, Marine. I know there's a couple days left, but I don't think any other service does it like that,
We don't. I've been looking into esprit de, like the Semper Fidelis and what that means. And there's no other service that's like it. That has the esprit de corps that we do.
You can look over my shoulder. I loved it so much, I named my business after it. And I can't tell you how many people have reached out and said, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. I said, this guy's got to be a Marine. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You have Marine written all over your branding and you. So it's good.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Well, listen, I know a lot about you, Dr. T, and the audience, let's assume they do not. So the intro was good, but brief. What more do people need to know about Dr. T?
Well, Dr. T lives in a pretty awesome location of Durango, Colorado for a reason. My family and I moved here intentionally after the pandemic to grow our leadership and wellness business, which was the pivot that we decided to make in the pandemic. And, we can do that from anywhere. But I have two little boys. I'm married to an amazing man who actually, we call him our Chief Delight Officer. He runs all the operations of our business. But we're a human performance business. Movement RX is a human performance business. And we help leaders and their organizations thrive, but starting with their own well-being, because it affects their energy, their resilience, how they show up, how they react and respond to their people, how they handle conflict, how they listen. So it's actually a foundational thing that we provide an organization. Leadership first, then their people, because the buck starts and stops with the leader. So if you want to make something happen in a company, if you want culture to change or things to shift, it's got to start at the top.
I love it. So is there a demographic that you work with, you find yourself working with more often than not? And is your business, I know you're in Colorado, is it local based or are you across the nation?
No, we're across the nation. We have there's really three arms of our business. One main one is we have a commercial business where we grow it through speaking and doing training. So I do a lot of keynotes. We have a lot of speakers on our team who are professionals in different aspects of well-being, mindfulness, meditation, sleep, fuel. So that demographic of usually on the commercial side, we found ourselves working a lot with law enforcement, first responders, veteran-owned businesses. We worked in the contracting space, with contracting like engineering, think business or bridge building, like those kind of organizations. And we've also teamed up with landscape architects when you think about how to help a community, that work with municipalities to make communities healthier with the way how they plan a community to be healthier. We have started to consult in that space, which has been pretty cool. We also work with business officials in schools. So not the teachers, but the people that run the business of the school. If you think about the CFO, the CEO, the superintendents. So we go into school districts and work with them as well. And we have a government arm of our business, government contracting arm, because we're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, a woman-owned small business. So we work, think whole health, like anything which in our eyes is human performance, right? But VA is whole health program, the CDC, we offer whole health, NASA, like giving these larger government organizations and even small municipalities whole health kind of on-demand programming as well as live trainings. So that's the government contracting. So the two, are very similar, just different distribution of services. And then the third is a small arm, which is, so think wounded warrior. Like we are all movement specialists in our field of well-being. We want to be very inclusive to those with disabilities or adaptive needs, right? So we found that in the university space, we're all academics, we have some PhDs on our staff, that they don't really have great training around how to help someone with a disability, a missing limb, we call those with disabilities, or adaptive needs, find their fitness again. Not just play a sport, but like get healthy and strong again in their new normal. Yeah. So we have an arm of our business that's just focused on, we have a college level course that's an elective for graduate school and undergrad, exercise phys, kines, and even DPTs, right, are using our courses now too, doctors of PT. So kind of it's a small arm of our business, but a really, like, most of the reasons why people have come to work with us is because of that arm, because they want to help wounded warriors and those with disabilities find their fitness again, not just like kayak and play baseball, but like, let's like let them be strong and healthy again, So that's pretty cool. My focus though, I don't really spend a lot of my time there anymore. Although it's near and dear to my heart, because as we grow, it's like, I do a lot of speaking, which I've actually grown to love so much. Not from a standpoint of look at me, but like you can impact an audience so quickly from a stage. And I love that. Versus in a clinic, you only get to do one-on-one. So, all right. I could talk for hours with you, Mike, by the way.
No, I love it. Well, listen, I want to go back because like a true professional, you don't really talk don't talk about yourself, but you have a really good athletic background. And I think it probably impacted your whole attitude, outlook on life, might have led you to the Marine Corps. So, D1 scholarship softball player, professional softball. So tell us, how'd you get involved, and just take us through your athletic career?
Yeah, well, I mean, shoot, I was the shortest in my family at 6'1". So I grew up with my dad and two older brothers who are very tall. So we played basketball. Like basketball was in our family. We played a lot of it. And then my brothers got involved in baseball, and I was like, oh, I got to do what they're doing. Basically, that's how I lived my life up until 18. Was like, I'm doing what they're doing. Play softball, play baseball, play basketball, be in the Boy Scouts, the honorary member of the Boy Scouts. Girls weren't allowed in the Boy Scouts then, but I was. And then of course go in the Marine Corps later on. But I played college softball at Villanova. I was a pitcher. And then I served in the Marine Corps for 4 years after college, but then didn't know what I wanted to do after that and got recruited to play professionally in Italy for their professional team. And at that time, the professional league in the U.S. had shut down, but it would kind of ebb and flow, probably depending on money. But I got to play with a lot of U.S. girls, Italian girls, and Australian girls, ladies, and played a year of that and was like, now I need a real job because I didn't get paid very much. And my dad was like, yeah, you need a real job. Like, find something that will be a good career for you. But a career, not just a job, like something that you're going to love, which, of course, making that decision is hard, too. Like I didn't know what I would love, but I did find out I wanted to help people understand their health and well-being. I wanted to understand that for myself, and that's became my job over time.
Yeah. So to set the stage, I'm going to ask you some leadership questions in a minute, but I don't know. I think I kind of know, but I'll bet most of the audience doesn't know what is entailed with becoming a doctor of physical therapy. What's the educational wickets you got to meet?
So there's a non-linear path and a linear path. I took the non-linear path. The non-linear path is in college, I got my political science degree, which wasn't helpful for going into the health sciences. So after I got out of the Marine Corps and played my year of professional softball, I was like, okay, I wanted to go into medicine. Physical medicine, PT, was a good fit. So I had to do all my prerequisites. You have to do, unless you get your undergrad in exercise phys or pre-med or something like that, you have to do all these prerequisites, which include chemistry, physics, biology, things like that. So I did that at a Cal State Long Beach, where I lived after the playing softball. And so you do 2 years of prereqs, then you apply for PT school, hope to get in. It's super competitive, like any medical degree. And then my PT school, though, that I applied to was an accelerated program. So instead of 3 years, it ended up being 2.5, 2.25 years, I think. So it was really like you don't get any summers or anything. It's just, you get 2 weeks break in between trimesters, and it just goes for the whole 2.25. So, all together after softball in the Marine Corps, it was 5 more years of training in school, which, seems significant for people, but when you're going after something you want to learn about. Now, I'll tell you this, PT wasn't exactly like the traditional PT work wasn't for me, but the knowledge of what I was learning was. And so I've morphed my license and what I know about longevity and preventative health to be my job now versus traditional PT. So there's not many traditional PTs doing keynote speaking on longevity or
I hear you. Well, listen, let's get rolling here. Well, thank you for that. That sets the stage. I'd be willing to, I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, but I'll bet you the vast majority of the audience did not know what it took to get there and all of that. I will say this as a caveat. When I was in college, there was a bachelor's in physical therapy, and you went to my college for the first 3 years, and then you went to Temple University for the second 2. And every single person that I knew that said they were going to be a physical therapist never made it. It was that hard. Academically, it was just that hard. So
it took a lot of
good on you
to get me
good
to
on
PT
you.
School. I mean, my dad was like, I remember him saying, you find the smartest person in the room and you just hang out with them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, good for you. Yeah, good for you. Well, listen, I ask this of everybody that comes on. If you were limited to just 2 or 3 sentences, an executive summary, if somebody found you and said, Dr. T, what's your philosophy of leadership? What would you say very quickly to them?
Well, my philosophy of leadership, it's not a title, it's an action. And a true leader is someone who is willing to take care of themselves so they can better show up for the people that are around them. They're open-minded, they're healthy, and they're good listeners.
Good. Love it. Great answer. The next one is the classic, leaders, born or made?
Made. Yeah, they're made.
Care to elaborate?
Well, we all are born into different circumstances and upbringing and families. And that is, as parents, as teachers, it's our job to help set the example for our young people. And like, I know people who have been born into poor circumstances who have made their way to be amazing leaders. Their parents weren't, but they had a teacher or a coach that really set an example for them. So I know based on how you can train your mind and body that people can change and people can get strong if they want to. And you can take on new skills. Like I've had to relearn, right? I have become a better leader over the years because of my failures. And, I had a wonderful upbringing, but a hard one. And so I look at my dad was a great example of a great leader. He had his own struggles though, but not everyone has that. But I've seen people come from not great means or family upbringing become great leaders. So I know if you want it, you can do it. But there has to be, I do believe there has to be an anchor in your life, someone that you look up to who's an example. Just look at Dr. Doughty. He's a professor at Stanford, the Center of Compassion. He was raised with an alcoholic father and a mother who wasn't present, right? And he, at one point in his young life, he met someone who taught him how to meditate. And that was his thing, like it took him under his wing and taught him how to meditate. And he learned how to train his mind to be stronger because he didn't see that from his own parents. And so his story is remarkable. He's got a great book called Into the Magic Shop that I would highly suggest.
Yeah, I love it. Well, listen, I still follow you on social media. You're in my feed. Always watch your videos and all of that. Very well done. So it's clear to me that you're one of those unfortunately rare individuals. Not for you, but it's unfortunate that most people don't wake up in the morning and get to do their passion, live their passion, what they are so passionate about. And it's clear to me that you live this lifestyle and you want to help all these people. Aside from the obvious, why is this work so important to you, Dr. T?
Well, I share this actually in most of my keynotes, and I'll share this here. Just a short story. Partly, a lot of it has to do with my own father. Right? I'm very big on preventative care and longevity, but not just for living longer, but like improving your quality of life. I've lost my father and I've lost my mother. I've lost a lot of friends. Probably some of the listeners out there have lost people. You've lost people in your life, Mike. We only have one life. And I think a lot of people waste it because they're so focused on their social media or how much money they're trying to make to get to a point, right? But where is that? When is that point? When is that someday? It doesn't exist. And I see it. And it wasn't really until my dad passed away where I was like, oh my gosh, time is really precious. What am I doing with my time? We only have one life and it goes really fast. And it's really awesome if we look up and look around and enjoy the people around us. But, there are certain things that allow us to improve our quality of life, like learning to forgive. All of these things, I still grieve. I grieve my parents. I grieve my loved ones I've lost. And I've learned to grieve well because grieving is a part of life, right? I've learned to lean into the parts of grieving that can be actually very powerful. Learning to forgive people, even though they don't forgive me back. Because if you hold on to that anger, it only festers. Learning that, one of the best medicines we can give ourselves is exercise. It's free. Yet 70% of Americans don't do it. And yet that's the very thing that can help also prevent disease and also go through disease much more efficiently, like you're experiencing and you live, Mike. Connection, like being around people who are not toxic, who lift us up, right? How many people just hang out with people because they think it's cool or, they have to because their mom said so or their friend said so. No, hang out with people because they build you up and you build them up. And let go of the people that don't. But a lot of people don't live that way. And I just feel that it's my job to help people understand that this life they have, it's going fast. So how do you want to live it? And by the way, if you take care of yourself, it's way better. And you're going to be a way better leader and a stronger leader. And maybe you don't make as much money. Maybe you make a lot more money. I don't care. but you're going to have a much higher quality of life. And, you know, my dad passed away too young. He was 69. We were sitting in I was showing the story. We were sitting in a diner. We just done a 100-mile bike ride. He was actually a really fit guy. He did these 100-mile bike rides, which wasn't a big fan of, but it was my way of spending time with him. And he was sharing with me his hopes and dreams of what he wanted to do after the priesthood. So he was a second vocation Catholic priest. That's for another podcast episode, Mike, but, you know, rare position. And he was sharing that he may want to get remarried and like live near me. And I was like, not too close, but, you know, live near me. And, but, you know, and I was sharing with him my hopes and dreams, which I really didn't know what they were because I just got out of PT school. And yet I wanted him to retire and move on from the priesthood. That's what he wanted. It was beginning to wear him down. I could see the burnout in him. Yet 3 months later, he married my husband and I, which is pretty cool, performed the ceremony. And then 3 months after that, he passed away. Like, just like that. And too young. And my dad, you know, was very good with people, very good at physical fitness, just didn't sleep, didn't rest, right? Didn't know how to say no. And not that, you know, I can tell the coroner, like, why did he die? He passed away of a heart attack. But that was maybe where the arrow landed, but where was the trajectory? He didn't rest enough. Right? Didn't get his own time. He was always giving to so many people. And I appreciate him for that. But most of us are really good at performing at our jobs, but not good at recovery. And so when I get into the nuts and bolts of what I do, I teach you how to recover well. And my dad was a great leader. He just didn't know how to last. And I want to help great leaders last.
Yeah. Yes, well, very well done. You know, that leads me, well, it's clear. I mean, I would expect you to have an answer like that. And leads me to the next question. I mean, it's obvious, you know, I'm going to ask you, why should leaders, you know, pay attention to their wealth and their health and well-being? Unfortunately, most of them pay attention to their wealth instead of their health and well-being. The answer seems obvious, but yeah, it's obvious to me that most leaders, I mean, I'm out here, I'm working with executives, most leaders do very little to enhance their health and well-being. So, and I think most of the people that are going to be listening or watching this episode, Dr. T, are on the younger side. Some may not even be executives yet. And so I think you have a real opportunity to impact and influence people who may not be living the right habits, the best habits right now, but there's time for them to alter it and just get started on their journey. So what do you say to them? Why is this so important to a 32-year-old that says, what are you talking about? Look at me. I'm the peak of fitness. All right, well, put 30 years on that, you know?
Yeah. Well, so what is important is finding out what's important to them.
Yeah.
You know, for when it comes to those in their 40s, 50s, 60s, okay, look at your life. Like, we know that as you age, you atrophy. So at some point you start to see that atrophy. That is apparent, right? Physical muscle atrophy is going to happen. It's just how fast you want it to happen, right? You can lose a lot of muscle by doing nothing or just a little. But as you get into your 40s, 50s, then they perk up because they realize, oh yeah, I'm that person. I've seen the muscle loss and the fat gain. So that's a pain point, right? So figuring out what the pain points are. However, that still doesn't get them to act, right? Because as you age, you still see the fat gain and the muscle loss happen a little bit more rapidly as you get older. But what happens is that the older leader, I wouldn't say old leader, the older leader, they have families, they've got business, and they haven't figured out how to fit in actually this necessary self-care, not just, nice to have self-care, but necessary self-care. Because a lot of them have these all or nothing thinking. Like, oh man, if I can't get into the gym for an hour or do my mountain biking for 2 hours or, hit up Gold's Gym, every day for at least an hour. I can't, then what's worth? What's it worth?
Yeah.
So, or meditating. If I don't do what David Goggins does, like 3 hours of running and meditating, then, or, even John, right? John McCaskill, who I work with, you don't have to meditate for 3 hours or an hour even, right? 10 minutes is all. 5 minutes can be enough, but small is all. Like figuring out how to implement small is all into a really busy day and making self-care a need to have versus a nice to have. We share that it will improve your bottom line. It'll help you engage and retain your people, because guess what? Your employees stick around because they want to feel cared for. If they don't feel cared for, as soft as that sounds, they're going to hit the road at some point. Employees want to feel cared for. And if you're one of those leaders who's all caught up in your head, can't get out of your own way, and causes a lot of stress in your organization, you're not going to keep people very well. I've seen it in great organizations. Now, for the younger people, there's a different approach. Usually younger people, if you're in your 30s, they're more in the middle management phase, right? Potentially, right? Middle management, they have to listen to what their execs are saying, but they have maybe a small team that they're managing. That's a pretty stressful position to be in, though. It's actually one of the more stressful positions in a lot of companies because it's middle management, right? You're kind of being pushed around by both sides. And so, their pain point is burnout. Burnout's a big deal. Like, have a hard time handling stress. Our millennials and Gen Z, I think that's the younger generation, don't handle stress as well as older generation. And they just show it differently, I should say. Wouldn't say it's better, they just show it differently. And so that is a pain point for the younger generation. You don't want to feel burnout or this constant stress, right? I mean, maybe they don't see the muscle loss and fat gain yet, but they will if they are on this trajectory. But you want to help eliminate burnout? All right, then pay attention to these very important things of how you react or you respond versus react. So I found much more success when I figure out with each company and each leader, really, what's the pain point. I just sat down with an executive who I'm starting to work with one-on-one, who's his big thing is getting in movement while he's traveling. And it's a high stress role. He's trying to turn around a company. And so he's on the road half of the month. And he's not staying really in hotels that have a lot of gym equipment and stuff. So what do? And he also, doesn't train himself between the ears. There's nothing. I mean, he's very smart, very smart. Yet the training between the ears, what's going on, you can help change your relationship with stress, because stress is always going to be there. So with him, the pain point is making sure he gets in the movement, which is something that really helps him clear his head, but then also help him start training his mind to handle the stress he's under better, so he's less reactive, right? Another bigger company, actually a dealership I spoke to, right? They have low engagement. They have their people, they filled out a survey, a lot of them don't feel like they're cared for by someone in the organization. That's a problem. All right. So you know who that starts with? Not with them. It starts with the leadership. So, okay, what can we do about that? What can you do with your leadership, as well as what can you provide your people to help them feel cared for? It's much more than just a simple, here's a cookie party, pizza party. We got to engage with them, give them some time together to do things that aren't just work related, but self-care related. So
thank you. Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up. For the more data and stats driven folks that are going to be listening and watching you, do you have any empirical information? You just said a whole lot of anecdotal based on your vast experience. And I understand it because I've studied this too, not nearly to your extent, but I'm a student of this. And I want to be the old guy that's vibrant and active and all of that, And I'm 68, so I'm middle-aged. I say middle-aged. But anyway, do you have any numbers, statistics to kind of back up what you're saying?
Yeah. So I'll share that a company that has a really robust well-being program, for example, not just when I say program, I'm talking that's being utilized. right, from the top down, people are 4 times more likely to be motivated in the organization, which means they're feeling cared for. They are going to be 20% more productive, and they're going to retain. There's a number about retention too, which doesn't, I think it's in the teens, but it's still significant, right? Like if a company that has a robust program where it's utilized, a well-being program that's utilized, and we found that in companies we've worked with, like people are just more motivated and they're more productive. We've also found that companies with robust well-being programs outperform their competition by 20%. Why? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why, but they feel cared for. They probably retain their people. They spend less money on turnover, right? We also seen stats. There's a survey put out that kind of talks about how your leader impacts your mental health. So this usually is a way to get leaders to pay attention to, Mike, is the Work Health Institute put out a survey of like 3,500 individuals. And of those 3,500 individuals, 70% shared that their manager impacts their mental health just as much as their significant other and more than their doctor, right? So you think about it, you going to work, you spend a lot of time at work, a third of the time at work or more, a third of the time sleeping, and the rest of the time with your family. Well, okay, yeah, your manager and boss do impact your mental health. Like if they're, a-holes, not very nice, if there's little reward system, it's going to impact you. And so I always say, welcome to the bedroom and dinner table conversation, because your people are talking about you. So how do you want them to talk about you? It does matter. If you're trying to influence a certain population, you want to know how they're talking about you. You want to influence them in the right way, and they don't think you're a nice person. Well, then your perception doesn't match your reality, right? And you're not going to please everyone. But those are some stats I have. I know I have others up my sleeve. I always share a study around a company that had their leadership meditate for 3 weeks, and this also paints a picture of why leader well-being is so important. So 5% of the company, the leaders, were meditating for 3 weeks. For 12 weeks. And the rest of the company were blinded to this. They didn't know, but everyone took a survey around productivity and depression symptoms, right, to see where they were at. Naturally, over the course of 3 months, with the leadership meditating, they were calmer. They had less signs of depression, right? They were more productive. Yet the rest of the company also took the same outcome measure, and their depression symptoms decreased, their productivity increased. But they didn't know that their leadership was doing the meditation as part of the modality and study. So what does that say? Like it says the leadership came back like they were kinder, right? They were probably less stressed, showed their stress better, which impacted their people. Their people felt better because they weren't being maybe yelled at, or there weren't stupid demands made on them, or now their leaders are paying more attention to detail of how they were speaking people. But it was, I think that's a very poignant study because, I know for myself, when I go home, if I've had a hard day and I show it, and if I haven't slept well and I show my stress with my kids, they're going to react to that. It's going to impact their health that day. Yeah. It's going to impact my husband. Even with my own team, they can pick up when things are going on with me, and I can pick up with them. And so when you take care of yourself, when your well-being is like an important part of how you show up every day, you're a better human being.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I want to share my observation. So you gave us anecdotal based on your experience, now some statistics. I love them. I've been around a while, the leadership game, a long time. My first job was a Marine Corps squad leader at 18. And since that point in time, I have either been in leadership roles or leadership training and development roles. So I've seen a lot of leaders, a lot of units, civilian, various types of business, military, you name it. And I will tell you, and I know you're going to agree with this, I always teach leaders As go the leaders, so goes the team, always. And usually I'm pointing it out with character, ethics, integrity. However, I will say this, my observation is you show me a unhealthy or just a low energy, sluggish leader, and it won't be long before that sets the tone for his entire department. Turn that coin over. The guy or gal that's vibrant, energy, and I'm not talking about a D1 athlete or an Olympian or a triathlete or anything, just she's healthy, she's vibrant, she's mentally aware and agile and all of that. More often than not, her department mirrors her attitude, projection, work ethic, and all of that. So I'll let you talk about this if you have any opinion, but I'm speaking to the leaders now. Theresa's hitting it from one angle, and I don't have her academic background. I'm just telling you, I've been around a long time. And what I have seen repeatedly in leadership at every level, supervisor, manager, senior vice president, C-suite, absolutely validates and supports what she is telling you from an academic, empirical, and then of course her own vast leadership experience. Any thoughts on this?
Well, it's lead by example. If you want to see a healthier team, then you got to show it and provide. There are leaders we work with who are struggling with their own health and well-being, yet they are working on it, right? And they are investing in it. Not everyone I get to work with is as healthy as you, Mike, but they want to be. They want to be on that path, which is a big part of which is important, wanting it, because then you want it, you provide it for your people. Your people see that you're doing your best, you're transparent about it, and you're providing resources for your people. That's how it works. And that's what I've experienced. I've come to the point where sometimes in a call to action at the end of a talk I do, because I get to be in front of a lot of leaders now, and I love it. I'll say, okay, and usually I'll share a specific story about a leader I've worked with who's like, for example, this landscape developer, right? She's a landscape architect. She's a leader. She's a principal in her company. We met doing handstands at a CrossFit gym. Now I have my own home gym now, not as extensive as yours there, Mike, but it's pretty good. It does the job. And so, but Anne and I met doing handstands, and she's like, oh man, I love what you're doing in wellness. I'm an architect. Let's team up. I want to help communities thrive. Because you know what? You know the science around how to help a community thrive longevity-wise, like how many green spaces, what kind of space would be useful, educational information. Let's team up. So at the end of my talk, sometimes I'm like, I need to talk to Anns out there. If you care about longevity, yours and your families and your teams, and you want to make a better community, then come talk to me. If you don't, then we don't need to talk, right? Like it doesn't go anywhere when I talk to leaders who are like, not a big deal. Now I'll tell them at some point you're going to care because you're going to get sick and you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be ready for it. And you have a choice then, either to start to work on your health or just let yourself be sick. Like, why not just start now? Because you know how you want to live that last decade of your life. We can look at the science and say it matters right now how you're living. So if you don't want to be, if you don't, another quote I say is like, if you don't make time for exercise or movement now, you make time for disease later, guaranteed. Yeah. It just is. We all have the, like 30% of what happens to us is genetics, right? So there's some we can't control, circumstance, genetics. The 70% is, and that 70% will help us battle that 30%. Yes. So I always bring it back to how it impacts you as a leader, like putting questions in their minds, like, how do you want to live the last 10 years of your life? We can all look at people in our life who are not living a well last decade. And we can look at some people that are. And you know what? Do you really want to be the a-hole to your people? Do you really want to be the unhealthy leader who sits there and tells everyone else what to do, but you don't do it? I don't think so. So I kind of get very real with people. And I think what helps for me is I bring in the stories, the personal stories, because, you know, you have to make it relatable. Like I can sit there and tell you a lot of stats, but I have to make it relatable to you, you know, and there's got to be an emotional component to it. Everyone, you know, every audience has the emotional brains and more of the tactical, I guess. And you got to feed both. But there's storytelling has become a really important part of my job, much more than studying the clinical work, because I have to tell a story that touches people. They pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. You know, I want to switch gears slightly because I know you're passionate about this as well. I've stalked you on social media and read all your stuff, and you're big on telling leaders that, you know, or anybody for that matter, you have to find out what your purpose is. What is your purpose in life? And I love that. In fact, on my website, there's literally a header that says my purpose. And if you click on that, it's my ugly face, and it says essentially my purpose is to help develop leaders during and after my life. And if I want to do it afterward, I got to leave videos, books, anecdotes, articles, and all of that. So my purpose, I get to wake up every day like, I get to do leadership stuff again. I can't wait. I can't wait to wake up. And I always have viewed you the same way. You have found your purpose. Why is this so important to leaders to find out, whatever it is, there's no wrong answer. What's their purpose? Why is this so important?
Because it's how you bring it to work with you. It's in your being. Your why is, people don't, as Simon Sinek said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you look at all the blue zones, a reason why those people live into their hundreds, one big reason is they have a purpose amongst eating good food and moving. But it's a very important part of our well-being and our longevity. And you know what, like for some people, they may not know what it is, and those people suffer. Like if you look at veterans getting out of service members getting out and are looking at what their new purpose is, one of the big reasons why they suffer is because they don't know, or they haven't found it yet, or they haven't taken the time to find it yet. And there's also an accepting of a new normal that goes into that. But purpose is a foundational part of our health as a human being, and it is the primary thing we need. And next is what we do with our well-being, like moving the body, getting sleep, like all those things impact us too. But our purpose is like a foundation of why we do what we do, a part of who we are. And for me, I thankfully I get paid to do these things, but I would talk about them even if I wasn't. And I feel like I have to, for me, like I can't work in another job and do this. Like I need to do this as part of my job because people need it so badly. And it is part of, like, I get excited when I wake up because I get to influence groups of people and talk to them about this and influence them in ways that their one-on-one PT or medical doctor can't do, and wake them up to their own life, right? Sometimes people need to be refreshed on why they do what they do because people have lost their path. You know, I know that in playing softball, I played so many games that I had to remind myself of why I loved playing softball. And that helped me. It helped me get back out there, helped me practice in inclement weather when I didn't really feel like it, right? Your purpose helps you get out and take care of yourself when you don't feel like it, making those hard decisions, talking to people, pushing yourself, pushing your business in ways they need. So yeah, purpose is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base layer, what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, I don't want to go to the dark side, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also tell these emerging leaders and impressionable leaders, and maybe even the older ones that are still impressionable and can learn about maybe an anecdote that you're aware of, a situation where, here I am aware of a leader that did not take care of himself or herself, and this is what happened. And I want to lead with this because I've got one. When I was with my company as a high-level executive, we brought in an executive that was a highly accomplished guy. I mean, education, highly accomplished. This guy had already made a gazillion bucks, at other companies, creating and selling companies. He was the real deal from a business perspective, and he was the nicest guy. Now, from a physical standpoint, he did not work out. And this is on an executive team. There's a lesson to this. I belong to an executive team that probably had, let's say, 12 people. Every one of those executives worked out. Every one of them. Now, some more serious than others, but every one of them walked. Versa Climber, fitness center. I go to the gym. We had a corporate gym. They allowed me to build it and set it up. It was really good. It's almost as good as my home gym, but it's really good. And I'd go down there literally at 6 a.m. The CIO, the CFO, the chief marketing, they're in there. The top guys were already in there, and the rest of them would do it during the day or at home at night. So take that to the bank. This guy did not do this. He was not obese, but he was soft. He was kind of pudgy. My company made the top executives go to a longevity exercise, an executive wellness doctor and a complete physical every year. I loved it. We talked about it before we hit record. I've been going to this practice for 20 years. And initially, the first 3 or 4 years, the company paid for it. And it was an all-day physical, and I mean all day, cognitive tests, treadmill tests, max VO2s, flexibility, all sorts of stuff, cutting-edge medical tests. And, okay, you joined a company, and now you have to go do this too. He was struggling in his role. He had trouble with the pace we were running as a company and an executive team, and I saw that, and I think others did too. He went to that physical, and we never saw him again. And here's what happened, Dr. T. He took the physical, and the doctor said, "When's the last time you got a physical?" And he said, "Well, I hate to tell you this, but it's been about 30 years. Too busy, didn't go." Well, felt fine. They put him on the treadmill, and they had to shut the treadmill down before he even hit the 3-minute mark. Something was wrong. That treadmill test saved his life. But they medically retired him. We literally never saw him again. And it has a happy ending. That physical saved his life. It showed that he had some cardiac issues, among other things. They got him on the right meds. They got him on the right training programs. He lost weight. And to the best of my knowledge, and I think this was about 20 years ago this happened, the best of my knowledge, he's still alive and thriving, and he must be in his early 80s at this point. And so this had a happy ending, but he was close. Who knows when that bomb was going to explode on him, so to speak. And so that's the one I've got. I've never forgotten that. I have never forgotten that as long as I live, and I preach that to people. So I know you're seeing that as well. Can you give us one that you've seen?
Yeah. So, that's awesome that, for him, we all need a wake-up call at some point.
Yeah.
And with one of the companies we work with, they provide, so we do consulting to their management on up, branch managers to executives, and we provide 2 offsite trainings a year. And we've got about 65% buy-in from the whole company in terms of engagement on our programs, which is great. We want more. We want to get 100%, but hey, 65% is way better than 5%, which is typical for EAP programs, if you will. Anyway, point is with the wellness focus among people and leaders, they provided a stress testing done at a company picnic. And one of the guys that was kind of young guy, late 20s, big seller in the company, makes the company a lot of money. He's like, I don't need Movement RX. I've already got my stuff going on, but underwent the stress test that was being conducted, which was also included like blood levels and stuff, like looks at cholesterol, looks at cortisol, things like that, and blood pressure. And he was like borderline going to have a heart attack, like the way he was living, right? Blood pressure super high, cholesterol super high. And so if he didn't take that test, right, he wouldn't have known. I mean, everyone else around him could see he needed something to help calm him, but he wasn't convinced, right? He wasn't convinced that meditation or movement or the stuff that we provided would help. But it wasn't until he got that numbers that was like, you're borderline, like you could have a heart attack any day, man. Like you got to change the way you live. You're 28 years old. It's like, oh man, okay. So he started to engage more with what we do and pay attention.
Yeah.
So now he's a firm believer. But like everyone needs, it is common when you get a scare, you know, sometimes people need to be scared. I think that's actually, in my keynotes, I don't try to scare people. I just try to put stone in their shoes. Like, this is your life. Yeah. This is the reality. I've had people tell me, I did not believe in mindfulness or meditation until you said something that clicked for me. Like a lot of times, because I speak about it as a performance enhancer, people start to pay attention more versus like, no, this is just to help you. No, this is going to improve your performance in life. Like you want that. Leaders want that. That's why everything is coined as your competitive advantage. But yeah, that one story was a positive one, right? It took that for him to buy in, but it's because his company was consistently trying to reach people from different modalities, ours providing on-site testing, that helped him. We had another guy just came to one of our trainings who was like so ready to change his life. This was an older fella, probably in his late 50s, and an executive in his company, really not healthy, but it's like, because of the training that we conducted, he wanted to turn his life around. He's like, I'm committed to this. I sent him our sleep challenge information, reached out to him a few times, didn't hear anything, found out he had a heart attack and died. Just like that. And he wanted to get better, right? But it was too late for him.
Yeah.
And so it's, that was very sad. Like he was such a sweet man. And like, you could tell he was like, I'm ready. I feel like I've lost relationship with my kids and my wife. I hear that a lot, actually, especially from men. You know, I put so much time into my work. I've lost a relationship with my kids and my wife. He wanted to change things, but didn't get that chance.
Yeah.
And so that's a more sad story. But these young guys, I'm like, wake the F up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're running out of time here. Our time is coming short. But on that somber note, the people that you're talking to, Dr. T, they know what they have and have not done relative to their health and well-being. And I think a whole bunch of them are like, I need to get going on this. So if we had a live chat, Dr. T, I want to get going. I'm a busy guy. I travel this and that. How do I get going? You know, I'm sure you're not going to tell me that you go out and run a marathon next week. How do I get going and paying attention to my health and well-being? What would you tell them? So
I would say, just like with LandNav, think of 1 degree, well, not just like with LandNav, but think of like land navigation, your azimuth in degrees, right? You have to go. Yeah. You have an azimuth and I always say think of changing 1 degree a day on your azimuth. So what's the one thing that you know you need right now? And pick that. So if you're like, oh man, I've just been really moody and my sleep hasn't been well, I've been traveling, but I know if I did some certain things, I can make a big difference. Okay, and then focus on sleep. That is the one thing I want you to focus on between now and 3 months from now. And maybe it's not that. Like for this one executive I work with, it's movement. All right, let's dial in movement. It's not going to be an hour. It's going to be 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. But we're going to teach you how to do Tabatas and EMOMs. Pick that one thing, one aspect of well-being that you know could move the needle for you right now that you really want anyway. You probably all could say it right now. Oh man, I could eat better. Oh man, I want to sleep more. Man, I want more movement. Okay, then do that one thing and do that for the next 3 months. Dial it in. And then you'll see, though, that there's a domino effect when you do that one thing. Right? When you start to sleep better, you have more energy to move. You're kinder, you're less moody, right? You're more cognitively aware. Of course, willpower can only take you so far. So, you've got this one thing going. Give yourself a realistic goal around doing that one thing. 5 nights a week, I'm going to really dial in my sleep, right? 5 days a week, I'm going to get some movement. I don't care if it's 10 minutes or an hour. I'm just going to do it. Yeah. But what helps is making it fun, making that one activity fun. Yeah, that sounds kind of ridiculous. Like in the Marine Corps, you run, you do pull-ups, you do it because it's part of your job. As a professional athlete, you do it. But most of us aren't paid to work out anymore. We're not paid for self-care, to do our self-care. So what's going to make it more fun for you? Well, maybe reading a really good book before bed, an hour before you go to bed to help you wind down. Or like a book not about business, but about something fun for you to read. Or with movement, put on really good music. Or people love the Peloton, right? They can watch a show. I listen to my favorite podcasts. I run in the mountains. That's why I moved to the mountains. So pick one thing and focus on that for a few months at a time and think of ways to make it fun. It's called temptation bundling. And what I want to do for your listeners is give them this Lifestyle RX, which is they can click on the link if you have some show notes, and they can download this PDF, which is basically those 5 components of well-being: fuel, movement, mindset, sleep, social support, connection. And they'll get information, evidence-based information on what they need to be doing in those 5 categories. And so pick off one at a time. And over the next year and a half, you'll have dialed in all of them if you stay true to it.
I love it. Well, listen, I can't let you out of here without asking the classic question I ask of all leaders on the podcast. The fantasy question: if you were able to bring back one leader from the past and spend a day with that person, who would you choose and why?
Oh, well, it would be my dad, because he's my dad and he was a great leader.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Well, I'd give anything to have another conversation with my parents as well. Yeah. And I've read about you and your dad, and of course you lost your mom, as a young girl when you were 10 and all of that. So, I have to tell you how blessed you were to have them, and then your dad and all of that. Very unique story. Well, listen, it's been a fantastic podcast, Dr. T. I have no doubt this is going to be out there forever. I mean, your grandsons and granddaughters are going to be listening to this someday. And it's a universal message. It's a timeless message. I think you're going to impact a lot of people via this podcast. I also think that people are going to want to reach out to you. And I encourage that. By the way, folks that are watching or listening to this, I am a client of Dr. T's company, and they've helped me out greatly. I've been a client for a few years, several years actually, and it's well worth it. And I would encourage you to reach out. And that's not a paid advertisement. That's just a life endorsement, from a guy that benefits from her expertise and her staff. How do they find out more about you? How do they find you? How do they engage with you?
Yeah, so my company is movement-rx.com. That's a great way to look us up. You can see a little bit more about what we do. Email me, teresa.larson@movement-rx.com. And the social media channel I'm on the most is YouTube, Movement RX on YouTube, or LinkedIn. So check us out.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, it's been a great episode, Dr. T. This is your second one.
Yeah, I feel special.
And I humbly and selfishly ask that you consider coming back someday and not have, I think the other one was 2021. It's been a while.
Yes.
And so I humbly ask that you come, but you got so much. We just scratched the surface today. I'd love to have you back at some point. I am focusing a lot. I mean, I've got podcasts out the kazoo on leadership. And this is so important to me that I'm now embarking on a health and wellness series. And you're it. You're the first one. So you're the gold standard, you know? So,
good. Set the standard. That's right. Well, it's an honor, Mike. You're living it. And so I love talking to you and other leaders like you who live it. That's what it takes. It actually takes champions. We're pioneering this, right? This is a new way of thinking for a lot of us, is being proactive about our health.
Yes. Well, on that note, I know you got to go pick your children up, and I have to go to a stretch session, working on my health and wellness. And again, Maureen, happy birthday. I know it's a couple of days early, but happy birthday. And say, give your husband my best. You're a great team. I love looking at your children, those young Vikings, you're doing it right. You're doing it right, Dr. T. And at that note, thank you so much. And go forth and be well.
Thank you. Semper Fi.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at fidelisleadership.com and sign up for our leadership newsletter. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Pericles.
What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but is woven in the lives of others.